This is an ABC News special report. Your voice, your vote. Election night 2012. Here again, Diane Sawyer and George Stephanopoulos.
And here we mark the time. Here we are. Ohio is in. We are projecting the battleground state of Ohio for President Barack Obama, which means you are looking at the President of the United States. Barack Obama has been reelected, the 44th president. Listen to the crowd out in Times Square. The man who came in promising the audacity of hope 4 years ago will now have a chance to promise possibility, a new future for the next 4 years. Coming up, George.
Another chapter in an improbable journey. It is well to remember right now that just 10 years ago, Barack Obama was a state senator in Illinois. Now he is a re-elected president of the United States. A very different campaign from 4 years ago. 4 years ago, he rode a wave into office, a wave of hope and change. This time, running for re-election, he had to try to beat a wave back, a wave of economic discontent. He did it with a campaign that was brutal on Mitt Romney, but also brilliant in its organizing, turning out the vote. Matthew Dowd, a huge victory.
The economy had suffered, where he had a right direction number that everybody thought he could get beaten. This is going to, both sides are going to have to reflect on this, because there's many misconceptions and problems that happen, but I think the Republicans are really faced with. The polls were right. All the polls were right that Republicans argued against and said, no, we're going to do it differently. We're going to propose a different electorate. It didn't happen, and they're going to have to face a future where there's no leader of the party and an electorate that is much to their disadvantage.
He always said he was a fourth quarter closer, that he was LeBron at the very end, but I want to bring in Nicole right now for your thoughts.
Well, look, I think that this was a campaign that has always had its doubters. I mean, this was a primary where he was sort of the third, fourth, fifth choice. We romanced Chris Christie. We romanced Mitch Daniels. We fell in love with everybody who wasn't running as a party. And I think that carried over. He never really was able to get the monkey off his back. We never stopped doubting him. And I think that hurt him. I think that until his own stellar performance in that first debate, we really didn't believe in him. And I think that took its toll on Mitt Romney.
Donna, quick thought?
4 years ago, voters wanted to make history. This time around, they wanted to make a difference. They wanted to make a difference in terms of somebody who they thought was on their side to create jobs, somebody, health care, keep the country safe and sound. This is amazing. It was tough, I have to tell you, but it feels good.
George Will, there was a moment after that first debate where it looked like the president would not be reelected, but as Diane pointed out, he closed with a kick.
He did close with a kick. He fought, both sides fought a gallant fight. Mitt Romney had a problem that I think, Nicole, you were talking about. During the Republican nominating process, the party turned first to one person, then another, to try and avoid what turned out to be inevitable. If there's a winner tonight, it's the senator from Florida, Marco Rubio, because all eyes are now going to be turned to him as a man who might have a way to broaden the demographic appeal of this party.
And Barbara Walters, you've talked so much about being there with those who have lost and the first thought they have when they know it's over.
Well, I just want to say something about Obama, because the second term for many presidents who won second terms was not good. Very often in the second term, whether it was Bill Clinton or even Ronald Reagan, the second term. Richard Nixon. The second term is not a happy, it starts out happy and goes downhill. But so he now really has to prove himself in every respect. And, you know, a lot of things are going to happen in his personal life, by the way, because we've been watching the two children, and it's going to be, Malia's not going to be going off to college. We're going to be more involved in what they're doing now. But the biggest thing he has to do, of course, is to practice what he has been preaching. Now he really has to get those jobs.
We want to go to Jake Tapper in a moment, but first, David Muir at Romney headquarters. Silence.
Well, I can tell you, George, it's a tough room to be in. You can see the crowd here behind me. They are trained on the big monitors in the front of the room that have been watching the cables and switching back between the major networks with the announcement that Barack Obama has been reelected. I was talking to a couple of voters here who have gathered supporters, and one woman said, "I'm shocked." She said, "You know, we've got to do something about this deficit, this debt. My children will pay for this." So I think from this room and from, a good part of this country that was supporting Mitt Romney's effort to become president, there's going to have to be a message from this president-elect in a second term about what he'll do to rein in the spending and to address the deficit and some of these issues that Mitt Romney championed in his year-and-a-half run. Really, as you know, George and Diane, he's been running for 6 years or so. It's been a long time in coming to get his name on that ballot. He said he was humbled to see it there this morning. And he was asked by all of us here in the press earlier today, had he thought about what it would be like not to win this race, what he would do. And quite honestly, he said he'd only prepared a speech for victory. He said, "I haven't thought about it, but I do have a life that's very important to me, and I have a family." That's a message he has said along the way, saying regardless of whether he wins, he'll be okay. But the fight goes on for some of the issues and the causes that this campaign believed in selecting Paul Ryan and in his tough talk on debt and spending in Washington. And I think the supporters of the Romney-Ryan campaign are going to expect to hear from this president what he's going to do to try to now bring this nation together, George and Diane.
And we could see the tears all around you there, David. I want to head over to President Obama's headquarters, Jake Tapper. And we have a tweet, Jake. I'm sure you know about this, too. We're all in this together. That's how we campaigned, and that's who we are. Thank you, Barack Obama.
That's right. In fact, normally we're used to a president accepting a victory such as this with a big speech. We first got indication that President Obama was declaring victory by a tweet, a picture of him and Michelle Obama hugging, saying 4 more years. And then again, this personal tweet signed by the president saying, as you say, we're all in this together. That's how we campaigned and that's who we are. Thank you. Signed B.O. Barack Obama. It is electric here, Diane, at campaign headquarters in Chicago. They are crying tears, but different from the tears at Romney HQ in Boston. They are tears of joy. People hugging each other, celebrating, very excited. There was a lot of concern that the economic problems that the country was having and the difficulties President Obama was having with certain demographic groups was going to mean this was going to be a very long night. It turns out not so long after all. This is the 3rd president in a row who has been reelected, and he did it using the same strategy of the previous president, George W. Bush, the president who he blames for so many of the troubles that still are problems for him today, problems for the American people today. He had George W. Bush fought for re-election, even though the public was ambivalent about him because of the war in Iraq, had a fairly low 49-50% approval rating. He did it by making the alternative unacceptable. And that's what he did to John Kerry. That's what George W. Bush did to John Kerry. And that's exactly what President Obama did to another patrician Massachusetts politician, Mitt Romney, making him an unacceptable alternative. That, of course, is just the strategy. This is a bigger moment than just political strategy. President Obama standing for so many things for so many people, the demographic groups that supported him, women, minority groups, urban communities, very excited this evening. And we're going to hear from President Obama in a short bit, but without question, this was a tougher campaign for President Obama than his previous one. And I believe he may be the first president in history reelected with fewer electoral votes than he won the first time he was elected. I'm not positive about, but I think that's true. But a big, big night for President Obama and his team that executed a very, very determined strategy that was tough, that took away some of the hope and change veneer off of his first election, but at the end of the day was victorious, Diane and George.
It was, with the exception perhaps of Franklin Roosevelt. You talk about those communities electric for President Obama. One of them right near here, up in Harlem. ABC's Deborah Roberts is there at Londell Supper Club. That is the same place you were 4 years ago. Another celebration, Deborah.
Hey, George, I got to tell you, this doesn't even seem like the same room that I stepped into 5 hours ago. When we arrived here, people were a little bit somber. Some said they were sick to their stomach with worry, thinking this would be a very long night. One woman even acknowledged that some Black Americans had been a little less than enthusiastic with the president at some point. Some disappointed in his support of gay marriage. Some feeling like maybe he didn't step up to the plate always. Issues that were important to Blacks. But tonight, she said, They are here for the president tonight, George. As one gentleman said to me, it's almost like a couple renewing their wedding vows. Maybe they're not as giddy as they were on their honeymoon, but at the end of the day, they still love each other. And tonight, I think you see that this love is still here for the president. These people are beside themselves with excitement,
awesome.
right?
I love it, loving it. 4 more years.
However somber you say they were, Jeffrey, you can't prove it by what we're seeing right now. We can barely hear you.